All right, let me ask you something. Have you ever had one of those light bulb moments? You know, that flash of genius, an idea for a new product or a business that you just know could be a game changer?
And then, bam, reality check. To actually build that thing, to even make a prototype, you need some seriously specialized, ridiculously expensive equipment. And for most people, that's where the dream stops. But what if it didn't have to?
So that's what we're digging into today. We're going to look at how the sharing economy, an idea we're all pretty familiar with, is being used in a totally surprising new way to unlock innovation and, well, build the future.
Okay, so let's really break this down. What is the big problem that makes it so hard for a new company, even with a brilliant idea, to get off the ground?
Well, researchers have a name for it, the twin hurdles of newness and smallness. Being new means you have zero track record, no credibility, nobody knows who you are. And being small, well, that means you don't have the cash for the tools and you don't have the network to get ahead. You're starting from scratch in every sense of the word.
And when you put those two things together, well, you can guess what happens, right? The failure rate for new startups is just through the roof. Way too often, they just run out of money and resources long before their great idea ever sees the light of day.
So is there a way around this? The potential solution comes from a place you might not expect. It's all about taking an idea we already know and giving it a brand new job.
I mean, we all get the sharing economy. We use it to find a place to stay with Airbnb or catch a ride with Uber. It's simple, right? It's about getting access to things other people own but aren't using all the time, like a spare room or a car.
Okay, now imagine taking that exact same concept and applying it to industry. Instead of sharing a spare room, what if companies could share a spare, high-tech clean room or a massive industrial wave tank? This is business-to-business sharing, and it has the potential to completely change the game.
So, how does this whole thing actually work in the real world? The research we're drawing from highlights two main models, two different ways of making these incredible resources available.
At the very heart of both models is a key player called the facilitator. You can just think of them as a neutral matchmaker. Their entire job is to connect the startups who desperately need resources with the bigger established companies that happen to have those resources to spare.
The first model is what's called centralized resource pooling. Honestly, the best way to picture this is like a library, but for super high-tech gear. The facilitator owns a central collection of amazing equipment, and startups can apply for a library card, so to speak, to get access.
Then you have the second model, peer-to-peer intermediation. Now, if the first model was a library, this one is basically Airbnb for industry. The facilitator doesn't own the equipment themselves. Instead, they build a huge network of partners who do. A startup shows up with a very specific need, and the facilitator plays matchmaker, finding the perfect partner in their network.
And look, this isn't just theory. It's happening right now. The study looked at two amazing real-world examples. In Norway's massive ocean industries, they use that peer-to-peer model to share things like giant test facilities. But down in South Africa's high-tech photonics industry, they use the centralized model, where a facilitator offers direct access to its own labs.
But this is where the findings get really fascinating. Because it turns out, the most valuable part of this whole thing, it isn't the physical hardware at all.
See, here's the thing. When a startup gets access to that expensive machine, they're not just getting the machine. They're getting the know-how from the people who run it. They're plugging into a professional network, maybe even finding their first customers. And they get instant credibility just by being associated with a big, established player. And this quote from one of the partners in Norway just nails it. They said, "You can't provide shared access to specialized equipment without providing the appropriate guidance and support. You can't just hand over the keys. The human element is everything."
That right there, that's what the study calls hands-on engagement. It's what transforms this from simply renting a tool into true, genuine innovation support. That guidance is what helps a startup actually succeed.
Now, of course, this isn't some magic bullet. It's not all perfectly smooth sailing. There are definitely real-world challenges to overcome, but the potential breakthrough here is just massive.
The research points to three big barriers. First, cost. Even shared access can still be too expensive for a brand new company. Second, and this is a big one, is trust. Companies are, understandably worried about their secrets and their intellectual property. And third, sometimes startups just don't know what they don't know. They have technical blind spots.
And that trust factor is really interesting when you compare the two cases. In Norway, you've got this high trust culture where collaboration is kind of baked into the ecosystem.
But in South Africa, the study noted more a culture of secrecy, which means you need really strong contracts and NDAs to build that trust from the ground up.
So, yeah, there are hurdles. But what's the big breakthrough? The real takeaway? It's that this model fundamentally lowers the barriers to entry. By giving startups access to both the tools and the knowledge, it makes innovation faster, cheaper, and way less risky for everybody.
And that kind of leaves us with one final big question. If a startup doesn't need $1 million lab anymore, if we can truly share the fundamental tools of innovation, what's the next breakthrough idea that's going to get built?